Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. We have a very special show today. It's time to be introspective, it's time to broaden our horizons, and it's time for us to tune in to new and different subject matters. I have Yawasoe Sinkalip coming to the studio soon, and I think he's here. How are you, Yawasoe?
Hello, greetings. Greetings. How are you doing, Cedric? Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Where are you from? I gotta know that first. You look very much in tune with a culture. Talk to me about it. Where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Guyana. When I was born, it was British Guyana. And for those who don't know where Guyana is, most people do. It's between Brazil and Venezuela. And I was very, grew up like just most people in South America, grew up with your culture pretty thick. And it was so thick, no matter where you went, it stayed with you.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, when people think South America, they might often think of, I guess you'd say, light skin or even really, really light skinned Hispanic people.
Yes.
But you seem to represent a population that lives in South America that not everybody knows about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I come from a tribe where we're Amerindians, right? And Amerindians in Guyana or South America, they're the natives, like within the Roraima River Basin, so that's like along the Amazon River as well. And my culture or my tradition is called the Wipishana. And the Wipishana is another part of the Amerindian culture. So the Amerindian, there are multiple different offshoots from the Amerindian culture or indigenous Amerindian peoples. So there's the Wipishana, and there are different types, the Arawak Indians, and different types of cultures that all the way to the Tainos. We were related to Taino Indians as well. We've had a long relationship with the Aztec and Taino Indians for a really long time. But that's just in the jungles of South America, every tradition crosses each other.
Wow. In other words, in South America, there are what I would say Black people or African American looking people down there in South America.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in Guyana, there's a lot of Indians, and they're dark skinned as well, some of them. And the Wipishana people, a lot of them, most of them are very light skinned. They look like you or even lighter.
Okay.
And they would look like, again, someone Spanish. You could mistake them for someone Spanish, but they're Guyanese.
What does it mean for you to be Amerindian? What is that?
Having to do being connected to multiple cultures, which again, Amerindian is the name of the bigger name for the different cultures, and it means that there's a root, a very important root that I am connected to, that if I choose to, I can stay connected to, and not only support but also help to advance, educate, in the moving of times, in the shifting of times, but then also keep a culture abreast of what is new. So I feel like that is my job from coming from this generation, being of my age and living in this place, to strengthen what has been left in me from those cultures and what I'm still learning from those cultures, to be able to share that with others, because we're all stepping back into understanding, what's the importance and reality of roots.
I think that is an awesome way to start the show, with the reality that you're choosing to strengthen the remnants of ancestry in yourself and then bring that to the world again. So what was once a strong and vibrant culture may have tapered off a little bit but you remember it inside you, and now you're bringing it back to the mainstream culture.
Yes, and it's like, there are times in our lives where, again, like we were talking about ancestors and things like that, you know, a lot of our ancestry is lost because the tongues that we've borrowed don't really call them anymore. Because, well, not just call them, but like energize them in a sense. And like your ancestral energy is within you. It's also within your DNA. Because when you're talking about your ancestors, you're talking about a line of energy that belongs to you. And so, there's a language they spoke, there's a way they moved, there's things they did that would keep you connected to them. But like if your movement and your language and things like that are not like aligned with that energy in any way, then, I don't know, when people talk about their ancestors sometimes, but they're not really moving in that energy, it's, for lack of a better phrase, it's like PlayStation, spiritual PlayStation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that a lot of people, particularly here in America, are in exactly that circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
They don't speak the language necessarily of their ancient lineage. They don't carry on those traditions because they don't know what they are.
Yep.
They don't maintain family traditions, and so I guess according to the truth that you're speaking today, if we don't know that information, then we can feel like we're not attached, but that does not mean that we're not attached. It just means that we need to learn more about our lives.
True. And, a lot of that comes from, obviously, from unity, but that's a very challenging thing at certain times because for lack of a better phrase, the avatar of unity is not necessarily the reality of unity.
That's right.
Because unifying for a cause just because it's not the same as unifying because it's necessary. Mm-hmm. And the need, when we talk about what we really need, like when at times a group of people get together to create a we, it's still a room full of eyes, if you feel me.
Yeah.
Meaning everyone's still kind of looking for something for themselves, and it's still not looking at the grander picture. So it's almost like a disease or like an infection at a certain point, that there's always going to be people who will always look out for themselves. So it'll always contaminate the we. Mm-hmm. If an I gets too strong in the we, it's going to try to become the leader. Mm-hmm. And so, we could take over, we could take back, we could control. But again, with the borrowed towns, like I said, borrowed conversation and the way of speaking and how it dictates the way we move, the we still comes back to an I, because, there's a point when, someone in the we gets desperate. Mm-hmm. And I see that. I've just seen that. And I'm only speaking I'm speaking general as far as like, what happens, again, like, back in the days, they say it only takes one person to fuck it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that you could be let's say in a group setting, maybe in a school type of setting, mm-hmm. and you got different teachers trying to galvanize the group of young people. You got different speakers, mentors, try to come in and galvanize everybody at one time, and it might not work. Mm-hmm. But then you'll have that one person, that one principal, that one visitor, that one coach that speaks in a way that collects the subconscious and the conscious. And it's like, wow, that one person right there is speaking in a way that is collecting us. It's gathering us.
Yes.
So looking at the fact that we do want more unity, we do want more cohesion. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that we are not remembering the things that we need to say in order to really get our people together? Is it that we're still trying to find the message?
This is true.
That it would take for everybody to get together? Because it's like, I've seen myself where people go back and try to understand ancient texts or try to go back and understand ancient people and ancient traditions, but they're using a newer lens, and sometimes that lens does not give all the information that's there. So it's like, are we missing the big idea or one of the ideas that if we heard it, we would immediately come online? Does that make sense?
It totally is. And, like, that is a great question. And even a lot of the words you use were just like domino effects for other conversations in that question. One, definitely the language that we use, all the way down to esoteric language. So esoteric languages can be really great to a certain degree. Like crystals could be really great to a certain degree, but like they're like training wheels to a certain degree to moving forward. Do you know what I mean? And again, it's about you empowering things with things, knowing you have the ultimate power to give power to anything. So language, again, I grew up in Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Bronx, Staten Island. And so like I lived through all different levels of language, and so the reason I'm saying that is like, so nowadays when you ask a person how they're doing, they talk about the sun, the moon, the stars, their ancestors, the earth, all these different things, and never really just say something straight. Like you'll say, I'm protected, I am guided, I am favored, but you worry. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of traffic jams in the current of those words, because if that's the truth, then you should be moving with a flow that is protected, guided, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's things we say that we don't believe. There's things that we say that are like commercials because they feel good. Right. And to a certain degree, feeling good is not enough. Right. Like, it's like Christmas or something like that. It's not enough.
Well, I'm so much on the same page with you that feeling good has not been enough for decades. We as a humanity are in an emergency right now.
Yes.
For a lack of understanding. We are beyond desperate for understanding. I think at the very most basic level, we want to understand each other. We want to, but it seems like there's a whole body of knowledge that we do not have that we need in order to actually begin to understand each other. Facts. And so when you tell somebody knowledge is power, but you can't break that down into several tangible ideas, that's problematic.
Yes.
Because when you tell me knowledge is power, I'm thinking I can read the dictionary and change my life.
Yeah.
Right? When you tell me to grow up, but you can't break that down into several tangible ideas about life, that's a problem. Because now I'm looking for anything that can graduate me into something.
Yep. And then and the graduation is illusion to a certain degree. Because, at the end of the day, you go to school, you go to university, you get 100 different degrees, you have 50 pieces of paper on your wall, but still you have to take the job you get if it came down to that. And all your knowledge and wisdom, et cetera, like, knowledge is power, but some people hear the word power and they don't hear the word knowledge. And then at the same time, being able to understand that, knowledge may be power, but movement is wisdom. Doing is wisdom. Courage is wisdom. And power needs something. What are you going to do with the power? The power might as well be the fuel, but what is it fueling? It's the bigger reality. And it is true. Like you said it exactly correct, that there's this big part that we're missing, but like, it's only because a lot of the parts that we're using have been given to us, weren't cultivated within us and created within us. Like, again, it's not that it's not happening, but not enough is what you're saying. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Like in the bigger reality of, we're making noise for a lot of reasons, but the noise that we really need to make and what it needs to sound like, that's not loud enough. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's not loud enough. There are people saying real things, but you know what I mean? I mean, it may catch on at some point, but like we need more now. You're right. We are in an emergency having to do with, you know, this presidency, this election. Like, you know, there's no reason to be happy nonetheless, because the person, you know, us as people, we're so used to like be, you know, to a certain degree, the slave mentality has us like just always wanting to get back at someone. So, you know, as long as we can infiltrate our captives, or we can like show them that we're good, we're not, you know, we're not what you think, we're not slaves anymore, you can't hold us down. And we're constantly trying to like prove to our captives that we're worthy, when we should be like saying, fuck you, you know, peace, we don't need you anymore. Like you're still using us.
Right.
But the percentage of people, you know, like I had this short conversation about the Illuminati with this one person, and she was talking about all the people on the. I said, listen, you know, in the reality, in the real, the table of something called Illuminati, you will find a black person there, a Spanish person there, a Mexican person there, a white person. You'll find a Jew. You will find every race sitting at that table called Illuminati, because the illusion that it's just white people sitting at the table is why we're all so fucked up. Because it's not just white people sitting at that table. It's not just white people are against us. We're against us too, you know, and you know, for reasons, you know what I mean, for positions, for all those things, and those become more important than just the moral reality, you know, that like even some of our leaders are serving the masters, and in the bigger reality, you know, they're you know, they're getting paid to be leaders. You know, like
I've heard people say that we all stand to gain a blessing when you share the knowledge. When you share your so-called secrets, everybody becomes more prosperous.
yes.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I do. And then even if you don't, it'll be shared somehow, I believe, as well. Because like the reality of how information is passed on in the real energetic of the we, meaning that we are so connected way beyond our intellectual awareness, that the organicness of creator, of universal's will is bigger than our minds. If anything, our minds cannot really come into that reality, but that's not the point. You know, it's like, you know, there's a lot of things that we're like looking for that have nothing to do with us. Do you know what I mean? Like this one on what is it, this channel, Gaia TV or something like this it's called, and a couple of my friends are like, hey, we're getting together to watch this thing on the Aztecs and da 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 da, and I'm like, cool, awesome, for information, yeah, you know, but you know, there's a lot of things on your cultures and a lot of things that you don't know that you could also look at, and so it's like this fascination to a certain degree with, you know, the mysticism and all these different things having to do with, you know, like, okay, it's cool, you know, the lost culture of Atlantis and blah, 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 and all these different things. But people are being herded into like learning about these things instead of learning about themselves.
Well, I think that you're on to something there, and we need to unravel the mysticism in everybody's culture,
Yes.
so that we can all have a clearer understanding of our identity.
Yes.
Nothing is more refreshing for me than somebody who can sit down and have a conversation about who they are, going back generations and generations and generations.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if it's a black person or white person or a Hispanic person or an Asian person. I'm very much intrigued at people who can talk about their history, let alone their lineage. I think it's a phenomenal thing.
Oh, yes.
To be able to do.
Yes, because it's saying where your mind is as well, like where, you know, you're holding on to that information because it's important to you.
Well, if I can see that you know where you've been, then I can project that you're going somewhere.
Facts.
Now, what did you learn growing up along the Amazon? What did you learn there?
Well, say as a child, you know, in reflection, I learned a lot of simplicity, which is still part of my life. My mom worked for, I'm an identical twin brother. I mean, twin. I have a brother who lives in Brazil. His name is
Wow.
Carl. He lives
Okay.
in on the coast in a place called Natal in Brazil. And we were raised by our grandmother, who was a high priestess in the Yoruba tradition, and Candomblé, which is
Really?
another tradition in Brazil. And so because my mom worked for Pan Am and she's an airline stewardess, we were with her grandmother a lot. And so, it was kind of strict at times because she talked to us a lot. That's the one thing if you could ask me one question about my childhood, I say the most I remember is sitting down and talking to my grandmother, or having her talk to us. She would just talk our heads off. But it was simplicity. She kept things really simple. She had a saying for everything. For everything, she had a saying. And like we used to have, like when my brother used to fight, I remember there would be moments where she would say, what's wrong? What's going on? And then we'd both start talking. And then she would like have us both go do chores and do work, a whole bunch of things. And it got to a point where one day I remember I looked at my brother and we were having some kind of fight, and we heard her grandmother come in. And I looked at him and was like, bro, listen, when grandma said what's wrong, say nothing. And I'm gonna say nothing too. Because really, if you don't want to go and have to go do some extra work, nothing is wrong. And that really stuck with me, like in my life, in so many different phases of life, where I understand that whatever is wrong is what you say is wrong. And it has to do with your outlook and your view of life. And, at the end of the day, that's your greatest tool, including your self-talk and how you speak to yourself every day. Not only what you hear, but what you say to yourself afterwards, in regulating your own energy. And, this is just for individually taking hold of your own life, because then you get to make more choices based on, everyone's like, oh my God, you see what's going on? And you're like, yeah, I see it, but I'm not going to react the same way. I'm just going to take a breath and really pay attention to what's really happening in me. You know what I mean? So I guess it's one of the greatest teachings for me in that simplicity. And, everything else was simple. Like, our toys were like sticks and bicycle wheels. We used to like run down the road, hitting the wheel and just running after the wheel. We played with rocks, and it was really simple. So of the many things that I learned as a child there in South America, simplicity won. Simplicity was what you went back to. You didn't need batteries. You didn't, you had to use your mind. You know what I mean? My grandmother always said, go use your hands first before you pick up something.
Right.
So that was a great lesson. It still is. You know?
That's a great lesson. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that when you're growing up next to the Amazon, or at least the Amazon is like your
backyard,
then you are privy to so many lessons, just like the Africans learned lessons by living on the Nile. The lessons that they learned by living on the Nile produced so many different schools, so many different universities that became governments, and that became great worlds. I would think that you living along the Amazon was deep into a rites of passage that you could talk to us a little bit about today.
Yes, but then also I would have to fast forward to when I lived in Peru, because when I lived in Guyana as a child, like I remember a lot of my childhood memories, and I guess I could reflect on that a bit, like, because again, it comes back to that simplicity, being able to sit down and just listen to birds. Sometimes the parrots would fly and we would all be in wonder because, it was like 10, 15 of them at the same time. And, from looking up, all you see is the bottom of their wings, and they're just filled with colors. So it looks like a moving rainbow sometimes. And, nature speaks to you if you stay silent enough to receive. And, it's not, again, like the esoterical language where, I'm going to go out into the forest and say I'm going into nature, but I am going to activate my human nature so I can feel the forest, so I can feel the things around me. So I'm not just like, hey, I'm in the forest, here I am in nature, but I am quiet enough to know that the trees and everything else is trying to communicate with me.
Mm-hmm. When you are living a life that appears to be simple and you are in nature, does that allow you to tap into the huge inner world that you have in your body?
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, and it's really simple. Like last week, well, this last month, but I was like, there's lots of things going on, and at clients and phone calls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I stopped and took a breath, and I just like turned and looked into my backyard, and I've got about like 13 trees in the backyard there, and yeah, there's this leaf. I was looking at a tree, and this one leaf, like I saw it snap off the branch.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just started to fall, do its thing, and then start to spin a little, and then it did that, it spins some more, and then eventually it landed. Mm-hmm. And as I was looking at it, I was feeling within myself just this calmness of releasing whatever feeling I'm feeling right now, and how easy it can be to release something and just let it go on its own. Breathe it through, let it do its dance, let it, because something else has taken it to, and to trust that. And so it really brought me to a deeper understanding of how everything around you is trying to teach you and try to help you move through wherever you're going. All of life is communicating with you because it can feel what you're going through. Absolutely. But again, it's the stillness that within you to find that. Now, many people ask, like, what does that mean? It's like back in the days, you talk about meditation and like, hey, just to even think about meditating, you're not meditating. Like as soon as you go, I'm going to go meditate, I'm going to be quiet now. And now you're sitting down there thinking about being quiet, but you're thinking now about being quiet. And so it's a whole mind fuck to a certain degree. But, dropping into the self, dropping into how you really feel, dropping into what you really need, understanding you, from an internal conversation. So, because right now we understand ourselves, a lot of ourselves, from an external conversation, from our reactions to things. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? What you like, what you don't want, what you know what I mean? And you spend a lot of time protecting yourself from a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's still you. You're protecting yourself from you because, nothing can happen to you. No one could do anything to you. You either accept whatever comes to you, you don't. Right. As soon as you sign the contract, you're in it. Right. Everything and everyone.
And so once you're born, what we're raising awareness about today is that you have an opportunity and a responsibility to learn the nature within.
Yes.
Your nature, the nature within you, is a big, big, big university.
Oh, yes.
It's filled with the attributes of your mothers, fathers, your ancestors, all waiting to speak to you. And your nature is a lot of things for you to listen to, a lot of things to actuate and manifest. That's what nature is trying to show you.
Yes.
Just like there's a sun out there, there's a sun in you. I want everyone to be reminded that we have a huge, huge, huge learning opportunity to do by paying attention to ourselves and realizing the nature we have within. We're talking to Yawasoe, Sinkalip, and we'll be right back after a brief message. America's Next Motivator, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator, hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network. And we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to like, share, subscribe to this video. Find someone who can benefit from this conversation. Text and tag a friend. Tell them to hop into the comments and ask them questions. This gentleman here is a wealth of knowledge. And he knows we have an hour show, but we could go on and on and on and on. So if you have, be sure to get out there in the comments and drop them in. Now, during the break, I was thinking about what we were on to, and I think it was very powerful. Realizing that you have a nature within. That's the simplicity of it, is that it's not about everything that's out there, which is a whole lot for you to figure out. It's about what's inside, and that there is a multitude of value inside. Now, the problem with the inside is that we've been through so much trauma. We've been through so many experiences that have made us anti-self. We are so anti-self because we've been through foster care. 400,000 kids are in the foster care system today. We are anti-self because we've been displaced from our families. We've been displaced from our countries. And then no matter where you settle, you're always up against an adversity for one reason or another. And so we end up looking for value in other people and other things. And all these things result in us being anti-self.
Facts.
Well, if we're going to be anti-self, then we're never going to realize the nature within, are we?
Well, I mean, it's almost, the crazy part is it's almost like without, here's one thing. I mean, it's my own simplicity in this is that like the cells are our cells. Its job is to evolve, whether you mentally evolve or not. So it's almost like life will come for you and teach you, and the beauty of life is that you come and you go. So what you know is what you know, and what you do with it is what you do with it, but you are leaving, so get to work.
Right.
And the bigger reality, who needs to wake up? Well, I think something bigger knows who needs to wake up, because everyone's not going to wake up. That's just the truth. And the point is not that for everyone to wake up. Do you know what I mean? So some people, it's like my teacher used to say, like, don't become an activist upon yourself, where eventually you're for so many causes that you forget about you. You're for so many things. You're trying to right the world. You're trying to get people, you're trying to be part of the movement, etc. But your own life, your own worth, your own, etc., it's almost like you're waiting for something bigger to change to find you. And there are many people who are in that place where to a certain degree. And, at the end of the day, we're led. We're as human beings, we're meaning makers. We go after things that have meaning. And so, our so-called, at times, idols and leaders, et cetera, they're the ones who are supplying, to a certain degree, a conditioned aspect of what is important. And again, being led by whoever said that they'll take care of it is not really take care in it. Especially when we know what to do, but we're counting on one person, maybe, to make the decision for us. And for some strange reason, because of, not strange, but there are many real layers to this story and why things are the way they are. But in the overall, we'll just keep giving this power away that we say we desire to have, constantly. And, again, that's just another layer of the overall us understanding ourselves. And the most important thing about, language, we have ancestors. We don't have angels. Angels are someone else's tongue, and they talked about angels, but angels for us are our ancestors. Do you know what I mean? So even to that simplicity, and understanding what we say materializes in our lives. What you talk about will come into your life. So you know what I mean? It's almost like the recipe for the stew, but you keep saying the wrong ingredients.
Right. And another thing that I really want to manifest in this conversation is that we are in a cause and effect type of relationship with the universe. And your lack of knowledge of self gets an empty response from the universe.
Oh, say that again. Say that again.
Your lack of knowledge of self gets an empty response from the universe. And so we have a lot of people who are engaging in the world. They might be doing the best they can. They might be getting a degree, starting a family, starting a business, but they're unfulfilled. And the reason why they're unfulfilled, and this is what's going to make this conversation so important, is that once you gain knowledge of self, then you're going to get a different output from the universe.
Facts.
And so while it's definitely not about idol worship, and while it's definitely not about one leader, I do think that we need to spread the word that, hey, knowledge of self is key to you getting the appropriate response from the universe.
Facts. And, you know, the bigger reality, like, the leaders are necessary because real leaders create leaders.
That's right.
Not just followers. I mean, but followers are necessary to also create leaders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the bigger reality is then, you know, you're confusing your conversation, your relationship with the universe when you're not speaking with an energy, a frequency, and a language that really belongs to you to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? You sometimes will not receive what you're supposed to receive, really, again, connected to your ancestors, your knowledge, you know, to continue something.
So does that point our attention to the importance of silence?
Right there.
You know what? Let's take a moment of silence for silence. Ladies and gentlemen, what Yawasoe is teaching us today is that you don't always have the words to get back to knowledge of self. And what you need to get back to knowledge of self is silence. You got to be quiet. You've got to find ways to achieve quietness in your life so that you could begin to hear the sounds of life that are within you.
And really hear you.
And really, really, really begin to hear yourself. There is a majestic voice inside of you. There's a majestic presence inside of you. But if you keep talking or listening to what everybody else is saying, unless they're trying to tell you to listen to yourself,
that part,
then you're gonna keep on missing on your opportunity to get the proper response from the universe.
That part. And most people are saying, listen to me, let me show you the way. And so, you know, I'm not trying to call everyone false prophets, but we are in the time of false prophets, where just for the sake of having followers, you know, like Instagram, the amount of followers that you have shows your worth, but that's a false representation of a true leader. Do you know what I mean? It's what we're already in. We're already in. It's like, you know, here's how we find our leader. We choose numbers. Who has the highest numbers wins. It's not who does the best job. It's who has the highest vote. So we're not really talking about what you have done. You know, that's left to a bunch of the people who are paid to just say shit. The real people don't have the real voice to actually really vote you out of office because that's all still controlled. So our illusion of power of what we have, you know, like I'm not saying that voting is not going to shift or change things. Everything does that. But like, you know, like this one woman I was having a conversation with, she was saying like, you know, I understand like change, we need change. But like, you know, if you had to choose between two slave masters, who would you choose? You know, and understanding like, you know, what if we just didn't vote? What if we just decided to not vote for anyone, or if we decided like to vote for someone that wasn't even in office, but that person actually won because the numbers were so fucking high, and people are like, oh my God, it's in all of election history, we've never seen something like this. A person who wasn't even on the ballot won, you know, by a landslide victory. That shit is possible.
Right.
That's the power of us. That's the power of we. That's the power of a true collective. We could change shit like that. In small countries, there've been coups where the whole freaking place decided to march up to the freaking president's place and raid that shit.
Mm-hmm.
The whole fucking country raided the president's home and basically threw him out.
Wow.
Like, that's called a coup.
Right.
And the citizens, that's their right.
Mm-hmm.
That's your right. If the whole country decides like we don't like this anymore, you have the right to throw everyone out of office.
Right.
You can. But that's what I mean. Like, there's, for lack of a better phrase, there's some Kool-Aid people drank that they still don't know the flavor, but they really like it. Mm-hmm. And they think it's really good. And so, who's at the table of the Illuminati? All of us, to a certain degree. Because, it's almost like you can't be like, fight the power, but then you pay all the things you're fighting. And you're sponsored by them whilst you're raising your hands.
Well, to
a certain degree.
Yeah. To a certain degree, I think that we all need to do a lot more self-evaluation,
mm-hmm.
because out of 100 people, my fair estimate is that maybe 9 or 10 of those people out of 100 actually have knowledge of self. And so what we have to do is acknowledge that we are in an international emergency right now, mm-hmm. of people not having knowledge of self, and lack of knowledge of self results in all types of deficiencies amongst mankind.
Yes.
And so we all benefit when you are a great manifestation of yourself. But mm-hmm. again, we is better than I.
Yes.
At what point do we reach out to our brothers and sisters and say, hey, I want you to have knowledge of self as well?
Mm-hmm.
Because where 2 or more of us develop knowledge of self, then we can actually create a new culture without even getting political.
Facts.
What can we do to become a new culture? I was having a conversation in a barbershop one time, and I started talking about culture, and the adults in that barbershop turned around and said to me, there is no culture. It's cool for you to say culture this and culture that, but there's no unity. We don't have no culture.
These are facts, though. There are parts that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at just how many of us do not have proper knowledge of self, you realize the sheer deficiency that we walk around in every day. And so before we do a coup, before we become that political, I think that we need to figure out how to become right side up people in general. And so we need to be on a campaign of, hey, my brother, hey, my sister, do you have knowledge of self? Okay, let me get out of your way because you're obviously manifesting onto greatness. But if you don't have knowledge of self, here is a conversation, a curriculum, a mentor, a coach.
Something.
Someone that's going to be indubitably helpful in getting you to manifest into knowledge of self. Because when we don't have knowledge of self, you get fear. And when you get fear, you get all these negative outcomes. But the number one fear is fear of death. We know nothing about death. We go our whole entire life looking at life, trying to figure out life. And because we don't have knowledge of self, we know nothing about death. And as soon as the concept of death comes into the room, we go from confident people to inferior people. And that's the reality.
With the quickness. But so here's the deeper reality too. Like, we're so intellectual, but we still fear the inevitability.
When do we become spiritual enough across the board that we can achieve cultural resilience like the cultures that we like to praise? Because years and years and years ago, people understood life, they understood the light, but they also understood the darkness, and they understood death through knowledge of self.
And they knew that they went hand in hand. They understood
Exactly.
that it wasn't but then again, like, from the moment that people start searching for the fountain of youth, and from the moment we start desiring to live longer than the next person, and all these different things, we start losing the knowledge of self. The advancement to a certain degree, you know what I mean? It's almost like if you've never needed a television and you know what to do without one, and then suddenly you have a television. Now you've got a whole new bunch of information in front of you. You have 5 channels, but then you get HBO and you get like 132 extra channels. Now you've got a whole bunch of more information, and you will call yourself knowledgeable based on all of it. You can read 2,000 books, but you will not find you in those books. That's the biggest reality. So there's so much more to learn than what's outside. But then again, here's the real part. Like, so what's outside, the electronic empire that we live within, and how, nowadays kids are born with fucking email addresses and Facebook accounts, and the speed of things is moving so fast that while you're trying to learn there's so many things in front of you that if you don't catch up with, then you are not going to be, and there's a whole bunch of stories like that keep you away from learning you. What's the newest thing? When's the next movie? And there's a list of things that keep you outside of you in a virtual kind of energy. So spiritual, to a certain degree, sounds so close to virtual because it keeps you outside of you, constantly searching for the next thing to help you find you, but you're still looking for the next thing. And, we could call it spiritual real, because when you're not looking for anything other than you, through everything you experience, then you have an opportunity to really find you. It's almost like the blameless road. If you don't have any blame, then you're taking 100% accountability to all your shit, every single word you say and every move you make. So boom, that's a beautiful thing to do. It's a powerful thing to do, to not blame anyone, to take full accountability for all your moves, but then, to be able to be that powerful, you may have to heal your wounds that make you blame. So the domino effect to that self-knowledge will bring up some real things that you have to look at. And
That's
so
right.
for many people who even start that road to self-awareness, you start finding your fuck shit. You start looking in all directions, and there's a lot of things to look at that will occupy you.
Well,
like commercials.
Yeah, but nothing should stop us from looking at ourselves and achieving the ultimate reflection, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to reflect and reflect that which we are. We're not here to reflect the toxicity that's been put in us, whether it been the foods that we eat, the artificial medicines that we take, and the pollution that we accept into our bodies. We're not meant to be a reflection of that. So we've got to return to the best possible reflection that we can, and not let anybody's commercial, TV show, distraction out there stop us from reaching the grand reflection of what's really within, which is the messages of our ancestors. Which brings me to my next question. Do you have any tips for us on how we can begin to gain self-awareness?
I think one of the simplest ways I found for myself, honestly, is being, well, like your breath, because a lot of things can be said, but like when you take your time and take a breath at times, again, it's that silence that you were talking about, being able to stay still in the middle of the whatever, what do you call it? The catalyst. Yeah, in the middle of the whatever is going on for you. Because for me personally, at times when, some people say, you're a medicine man, you've been doing this for 27 years and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I guess you're just really chill and like Zen and peaceful. And I'm like, no, man, there are moments where, I want to slap someone, but in the real, but like in the moment where whatever comes to try to like grab me, I take one deep breath and I hold that breath for like a good 5-6 seconds, 10 seconds if I need to. And in that moment, the real the thing that I've cultivated in myself, the truth that I know that's necessary, the energy that I know that I really need to go to release, that is what's released.
Okay.
Because in that one moment, I could just let all my fuck shit out. But I understand it, especially if I know about my fuck shit. I know what it does. I know. So the more you're honest with just your stuff, the stuff that you know that doesn't really send out good frequency, good energy, like my grandma used to say, what are you serving? Like, what plate are you using? Did you taste the food? Did you taste the food before you served it to make sure that it was good? Is it warm? Is it hot? You know what I mean? Did you ask the people about allergies? Are you about to like give someone an allergic reaction by feeding them something? So when you open your mouth, you're feeding people something. You're serving a dish. And so at the end of the day, what are you desiring to serve when you open your mouth at any moment? So, just that alone, you don't, your introspection about yourself is the most powerful medicine that you can take.
Wow. That was key. That was key. So you are a medicine worker, and so can you talk to us about what that means?
I work with the spirits of different plants and the energies that they carry and the lessons that they have for us. And there are many plants in the jungles that are left with certain energies and attributes to help us, especially when we're lost within ourselves.
Can you
And
name a few plants real quick?
well, I work with medicine called ayahuasca, which is there's two different plants put together, and we're actually made up of this medicine. The chemical attributes of these plants are within. We're born with it, and then there's a cactus called San Pedro, and which contains mescaline, which is natural speed. But what that does is help to release toxins that get solidified within our muscles. Emotional toxicity is built up in your muscles, in your physical body. So the energy of mescaline helps to release emotional toxicity. And at the end of the day, how you feel will direct what you say to yourself. And what you say to yourself is the judge, jury, and executioner of your life story.
Wow. Now, real quick, because we're rounding third base today, I would love to have more conversation with you after this, because
yes, sir,
you have a specific knowledge that I think makes you very valuable to anybody on their quest of self-awareness and understanding of humanity. Now, when people use these plants, how do they re-anchor so that they could also be proficient in everybody else's reality?
Well, that's a really awesome question. In the bigger reality, when you come towards your spiritual work, when it comes to these plants, it's really good to have already, started having some real conversations with yourself. So you're anchoring back into the real. And so as long as those conversations are real, and you'll know the difference, like there's some conversations that you'll have, with yourself that just have you sit down. It brings you to silence. It makes you really have that deeper conversation about what is next. What do you do? What do you call it? Self-correction. So if you're on the road of self-correction, then that alone is already a good anchor with these medicines. Many people, they come to these things, and we call it popcorn shamanism, where you come to the hospital, you take the medicine, and you leave with a doctor's uniform on. Because there's a difference between true inner healing and egoic healing. Because the egoic healing is where you feel the story is done and it's cleared because you're happy and you're feeling good. But like we said before, it's not enough. There's work to be done. There's self-correction, because if it took 4 years for you to build up this fuck shit, how are you gonna complete it within a session, or within some good words, or within some good feelings? So a lot of it is being really serious about what that self-work really means to you, having an understanding of what you're doing right now. That means you've done a self-check. You're really honest about your self-check, because some people come and tell you things. It's like they massage the truth, and it doesn't need it. The truth lands. It doesn't float.
Oh yeah.
And it makes a sound.
That's right. And that's why we are landing the plane here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are upon the top of the next hour. This episode has a lot of replay value. He and I just did a very magical dance about life, what it means, what it can mean for you if you take another step towards yourself. Now, I'd like to ask you a couple questions, and we've got to get out of here in about 30 seconds.
Right on.
What is survival to you?
Survival is knowing that it's not needed because it's a desperate attempt to not trust God.
What is success to you?
Inner growth.
What is greatness to you?
Knowing you.
Yawasoe, I want to let you know that I've listened to you. I've been intrigued by your experience, by your journey, and by your wisdom. I want to give you your crown today while you're still living, give you your respect while you can still acknowledge it, and let you know, Yawasoe, that you are America's next motivator.
Boom.
Boom. Thanks for stopping by today, all right?
Thank you, sir. All right, man. I'll talk to you again soon, Cedric.
Absolutely.
Have a beautiful night, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, peace. Okay, bye, everyone.
Peace.
Peace.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator is going to have something here for you. All you've got to do, just like you did today, is stop by and pick it up.